She felt her heart stop when she heard his voice reading her words. And even if his world is made of smoke and scars, I'd still choose to burn with him. Hanbora turned around slowly, every inch of her body going numb. There he was, leaning against the doorframe, her folded pink poem in his hand, his lips curling into a smirk that felt like a knife. Lee Joon-ho had found her secret, and now the whole class was staring. The bad boy she had written about in silence, the one she had sworn never to speak to, was holding her heart in his hand, word by word, and everyone was watching. She wanted to disappear, and then he said it. Didn't think the perfect little teacher's pet would have a thing for guys like me. 1 second, that's all it took, and her quiet, invisible life was never going to be the same again. If you've ever had a secret crush, you'd die to hide. This story is for you. A week before the world turned upside down, Bora's biggest concern was keeping her poems hidden. Not that anyone cared what Hanbora did. She wasn't the type of girl people noticed. Her uniform was always perfect, her grades always flawless, her voice rarely louder than a whisper. She walked through the halls like a ghost with a neatly organized planner and dreams too big for her little world. But inside her pencil case, behind her highlighters and sticky notes, was where she lived for real. Folded pieces of pink paper, each one filled with poems she wrote about someone who didn't even know her name. Lee Joon-ho, 18, detention regular, motorcycle dreams, leather jacket in the middle of spring, and the only boy who had ever made her forget who she was, Itty, had started with a glance. He had walked past her one afternoon, earbuds in, bleeding attitude, and she had looked up just in time to catch it, that smirk, half careless, half beautiful. She wrote about him that night. His silence is louder than thunder. His eyes, 2 locked doors I'd give anything to open. She told herself it was just imagination, just poetry. But poem after poem, it stopped being fiction. She started noticing the way he tapped his pen when bored, how he always sat in the back but never really slept, how he laughed only when no one else was looking. He was chaos. And she was fascinated. No one knew, not even her best friend. The poems were hers and only hers, until Yoon-ra found them. It was during lunch break. Bora had gone to the bathroom and left her bag on her desk. Nara, the queen of everything, had been walking by when she spotted the open pencil case. She didn't even hesitate. She pulled out the folded slips of paper and started reading. By the time Bora came back, it was too late. Nara was already smiling. That kind of smile that never meant anything good. You've got away with words, Bora. Too bad you wasted them on someone like him. Bora's face drained of color. Give them back. But Nara wasn't done. Lee Joon-ho? Seriously? You know, he once skipped an entire week just to ride trains around Seoul. What is it with good girls and trash boys? Bora snatched the poems and shoved them into her pocket. They're mine. Stay out of it. But Nara's eyes were glinting. That same look she had last year when Joon-ho had turned her down in front of the whole cafeteria. Jealousy didn't fade in girls like her. It waited. And the next day it struck. It started with whispers. In the hallway, the library, the gym. Everyone suddenly seemed to know something she didn't. Then, during homeroom, it happened. Bora walked in, and her poem was already sitting on Joon-ho's desk. She froze. Completely. He picked it up like it was nothing. Read it. And turned to look right at her. He doesn't belong in this world, and maybe neither do I, but when he's near, I remember how to feel. His voice wasn't cruel. It was amused, and somehow curious. Everyone stared. And Bora, she couldn't even breathe. Is this supposed to be about me? He asked, eyes locked on hers. She wanted to lie, wanted to run, but her silence said it all. A long beat passed. Then slowly, that smirk stretched across his face. Didn't know you were into bad guys, poet girl. That's when the teasing began. First it was jokes. In class he'd whisper just loud enough, "So what's the word today? Am I more of a dangerous flame or a cursed prince?" Then it was nicknames. Poet girl followed her. Everywhere. Murmured in the hallways, scribbled on the corners of her desk, said like a secret only he was allowed to use. And worst of all, he kept showing up at her locker, in the library, even waiting outside her classroom. One rainy morning she found him standing at the school gate, holding an umbrella over her head. She stared. "Why are you here?" He shrugged. "Couldn't let the girl who writes me sonnets get soaked." Her heart betrayed her with a skip. She hated how easy it became to talk to him, and how hard it became to breathe when he looked at her that way. But the more he teased, the more real it started to feel, like maybe he wasn't just playing. And deep down, that scared her more than anything, because for the first time in her life, someone was reading her, not just on paper, but for real. And she didn't know how to stop it, not when his smirks were turning softer, not when his jokes were starting to sound like questions, not when she started looking for him, hoping he'd appear. What Bo-ra didn't know is that, while she was falling for him quietly, someone else was watching, and Nara was not done yet. She had the next move, and it was going to hurt. "Poet girl, you forgot your muse." Bo-ra didn't even have to turn around to know it was him. He said it loud enough for everyone in the hallway to hear. A few juniors giggled. Someone whispered, "They're kinda cute though." Bo-ra kept her eyes down and walked faster, her hands gripping the straps of her backpack until her knuckles went white. Lee Joon-ho, of course, caught up with 2 lazy steps. "You're really not going to talk to me now?" he asked, walking backward in front of her. His hair messy, his untucked shirt making the uniform look like a costume. Bo-ra stopped. "You've done enough." He tilted his head. "What, reading your poem out loud?" "In front of the whole class," he shrugged. "It was beautiful. I didn't say anything bad, I just read it. You should be proud." She looked away, cheeks burning. "You embarrassed me." His smirk faltered for half a second, just enough to notice. But before he could respond, the bell rang. She turned and disappeared into the crowd, leaving him alone in the hallway with words he wasn't used to hearing. Joon-ho wasn't the type to feel guilty. But something about the look in her eyes stayed with him all day. That afternoon, he skipped gym and waited in the library. He had never been in there this long before. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that made him itch, but it was where she always went. He sat at the back, pretending to flip through a sketchbook he never showed anyone. Bo-ra walked in 10 minutes later, hugging a notebook to her chest, looking like she hadn't slept. She paused when she saw him. "What are you doing here?" He held up the sketchbook. "Trying to be poetic." She didn't smile. "You can't. Just follow me everywhere." "Not everywhere, just places where you write about me." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't walk away, and for the next 10 minutes, they sat across from each other in silence. It was the most peaceful moment Joon-ho had had in weeks. They got paired for a class project 2 days later. Bo-ra nearly protested when the teacher announced it. But the way Joon-ho raised his hand and said, "We'll meet after school," like it was already decided, left no space for argument. They met in the art room. Dusty, empty, perfect. She expected him to mess around, joke, waste her time. Instead, he pulled out his sketchbook and opened it to the middle. "I draw when I can't sleep," he said, not looking at her. "Usually at night. Mostly places I want to escape to." Bo-ra looked down at the page. It was a train, not a cartoon, not graffiti. A real moving train in the middle of a dark tunnel, shadows and light blending like something out of a movie. "You drew this?" she whispered. He nodded. "One day I'm going to leave this city, take a night train and not come back." Bo-ra didn't know what to say. She just stared at the drawing like it had a heartbeat. "No one's ever seen this book," he added. She looked up. "Why show me?" He glanced at her then. For real. Quiet. Vulnerable in a way she didn't expect. "Because you see things no one else does." That night, Bo-ra wrote the first poem in weeks. But this time, it wasn't about the dangerous boy with smoke in his eyes. It was about the boy who wanted to escape. The one who felt like a shadow but drew the world in color. The project brought them closer. Too close. They started meeting every afternoon. First in the art room, then at the convenience store near school, then on the rooftop where they watched. The sky turned purple as they worked on their presentation, and slowly, without meaning to, opened the locked doors inside each other. He made her laugh. She made him nervous. When she corrected his grammar, he rolled his eyes but smiled. When he held the door for her, she pretended not to notice, but she always blushed. And somewhere between all those small things, It changed. One evening, as the sun bled across the rooftop, Joon-ho watched her laugh at something stupid he said. Her hair flew in the breeze and she pushed it behind her ear like she always did when she was flustered. He didn't say anything. He just watched, and for the first time in his life he wondered what it would feel like to be good enough for someone like her. Of course, it didn't last. Nara was watching. She saw the way Bora started smiling more, the way Joon-ho started, walking her to class. The way their names were always said in the same breath now. It made her stomach twist. He had once liked her, or at least she thought he did. But then he rejected her at the spring festival in front of everyone. Said he wasn't the type for cheerleaders. She'd been humiliated. Now the girl no one ever noticed was getting all the attention. And it burned, so Nara made her move. She created a fake account on the school gossip page. Anonymous. She uploaded 3 of Bora's poems, the most personal ones she had taken photos of before returning them, and she captioned the post, "Poems from the perfect girl. Secretly in love with the school's biggest loser." The post blew up in minutes. Bora found out in the middle of class when her phone buzzed non-stop. She opened it, read the post, and felt the air leave her lungs. They had published her poems. Janju, and everyone was laughing. Joon-ho wasn't there. He had skipped class that morning, so she walked out of the room, tears burning, and ran. She ran to the library, the only place that had ever felt safe, and there, surrounded by silence, she opened her pencil case and tore every poem she had ever written, one by one. By the time the bell rang, her hands were shaking. She threw them all in the trash, all the words that once made her feel brave. Gone. And when Joon-ho texted her later asking where she was, she didn't answer. The next day, she didn't. Come to school, neither did he. But Nara? She smiled the whole day because in her mind she had won. She didn't come back on Thursday or Friday or Monday. By the 4th day, the whispers started to fade. People found new gossip, new jokes. But Lee Joon-ho didn't forget. He walked past her empty seat in every class, trying not to look, trying not to care, failing. Something about the silence she left behind made everything feel louder. He found himself at the library after school, sitting at the same table where she used to write. Empty chair, empty table, not so empty chest. He hated this feeling, the guilt, the anger, the way he couldn't stop replaying her face from that last day. How broken she looked, like someone had stolen the only thing she believed in. He had wanted to protect her. And he hadn't. Bora had barely left her room since the post went up. The comments kept replaying in her head like a cruel chorus. She's obsessed. Does she think this is a drama? Loser in love with a loser. She had deleted her poetry folder, ripped up every draft, unfollowed every writing page she used to admire. There was nothing left to protect. So she hid, from school, from friends, from herself. Her mum asked once if she was okay. She smiled and said she had a cold. She lied like, "Apro," just like she always had, pretending everything was fine when nothing ever was. Joon-ho didn't know what to do with himself. He tried drawing. Nothing came out right. He tried skipping class. Didn't feel the same. He tried ignoring it. Didn't work. So on Tuesday, he walked into the classroom early. The bell hadn't rung yet. Most students were still outside. He stood in front of everyone already there and slammed a notebook down on the teacher's desk. It wasn't his. It was Bora's, the one she always carried. She must have left it in the library. Or maybe she had thrown it away. He had found it in the trash behind the art room, still smelled faintly of her. Everyone turned. "What are you doing?" someone asked, half laughing. He ignored them, opened the notebook, and read. Not her worst poem. Not the most embarrassing one. The most beautiful one. The one about the train. His silence rides beside me like a shadow on the tracks. He never says stay, but somehow I never want to leave. The room went quiet. Joon-ho looked up. "I don't care what any of you think," he said. "She's the only one in this place who actually sees people." He picked up the notebook and walked out. Didn't wait for the teacher. Didn't wait for applause, just walked right to her house. Bora almost didn't answer the door, but her mum called from the kitchen. "Bora, there's a boy here." She froze. When she opened the door, there he was. No smirk, no joke, just Lee Joon-ho, standing with her poetry notebook in one hand and his helmet in the other. "You left this." She stared at him, eyes unreadable. "Why are you here?" He shifted on his feet. "Because I miss your words." Her throat tightened. He held out the notebook. "I know I didn't stop them. I should have, when they laughed, when they posted your stuff. I should have done something, said something." She crossed her arms. "It's not your job to save me." No," he said, "but I wanted to." That hit differently. She hesitated, then stepped aside to let him in. They sat in silence in her room. Her walls were covered in books and dried flowers. There were poems taped near the window. She hadn't torn everything down, just most of it. He looked around, then said, "I drew something." She blinked. "You?" He reached into his backpack and pulled out his sketchbook, opened it, showed her a drawing of a girl on a train, looking out the window, alone. He didn't explain it. Didn't have to. Bora looked at the sketch, then at him, and for the first time since everything fell apart, she smiled. The next day she returned to school. Eyes followed her. Whispers buzzed. But she walked straight to her desk, sat down, opened a new notebook and started writing again. Joon-ho walked in late, as usual, but when he passed her, he tapped the top of her desk with 2 fingers and whispered, "Verse of the day." She looked up, smirked. Later. They weren't exactly friends. Not yet. But they were something. And that something started. Growing fast, they began texting every night, first about the project, then about music, movies, favorite quotes. He sent her a playlist called For Trains and Storms. She sent him a poem titled The Boy Who Stopped Running. He started saving her texts like trophies. She started waiting for his name to light up her screen. They sat together during breaks. She brought him snacks. He helped her sneak books past the library monitor. People noticed, but they didn't care anymore. Even Nara stopped trying, because no matter how much she glared, or rolled her eyes, or whispered to the other girls, Bora didn't break this time. She had already shattered once. Now she was writing her way back together. One afternoon they stayed late to clean the art room. She was wiping down the chalkboard. He was stacking paints. He said her name once. She turned. Then he walked over, took the cloth from her hand and wiped a streak off her cheek. She froze. He didn't move away, their eyes locked. No teasing. No jokes, no noise, just a breath between them that felt like a heartbeat. He leaned closer. She panicked and looked down. "I should go." He paused, took a step back. "Okay." But as she walked to the door, he said softly, "Poet girl." She turned. Smiled, gently this time. "I'm not going to run anymore, just so you know." Bora didn't sleep that night. She stayed up, writing one last poem, the one she was too scared to write before, about falling. Not quietly, but willingly. The first line hit like a slap. For the boy with fire in his veins and frost in his eyes, Bora's hands trembled as she stared at the phone screen. The post had gone up just minutes ago on the school's anonymous confessions page. And it was unmistakable, her words, her poem, her voice without her permission, again. But this time, it wasn't just the poem. It was what came after. She calls him a storm, a shadow, a god, but he's just a loser with good cheekbones. Here's what the good girl really thinks of our resident rebel. Bora felt like she couldn't breathe, because this wasn't about poetry anymore. It was mockery, a betrayal wrapped in her most sacred lines, and worse, everyone was seeing it. Within minutes, the school was buzzing, screens lit up across the courtyard. Hallways filled with laughter and fake sympathy, girls huddled in corners, boys pointed at her as she passed. "Hey, poet girl, want to write something about me too? You really think he's a god? Damn. Someone's thirsty." Bora kept walking. Face forward, shoulders up, one step after another, even as the shame burned down her back like acid. She reached her locker, opened it, tucked her phone away like it was cursed, and then she saw it, taped to the inside of her locker door, a printed version of her poem, scribbled over in red ink. "Get a grip, he's not Shakespeare." She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stood there. still, as if maybe if she didn't move, none of it would be real. Joon-ho didn't see the post until lunchtime. He was in the art room sketching alone when his phone buzzed. One glance, one scroll, and then he was up, moving fast. Anger in his chest like fire. He found Bora sitting under the stairs behind the gym, the place she always went when things got too loud. She was hugging her knees, face buried in her arms. "Bora." She didn't look up. He crouched beside her. "Hey, I saw it." Still no answer. He sat down, waited. Finally, she lifted her head. Her eyes were dry, but her voice was cracked. "Why does this keep happening to me?" He didn't know how to answer. But he reached into his bag, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and held it out to her. She took it with shaking hands. Opened it, a sketch of her. Not as she looked today, not broken, but how he saw her. Hair caught in the wind, eyes closed, smiling softly. A girl standing in the middle of a storm, completely unafraid. She stared at it. "It's how I remember you," he said quietly. "From that day on the rooftop." She bit her lip. "Hard. I'm tired, Joon-ho. I'm tired of people thinking I'm some joke, of being quiet and polite and still getting hurt." He nodded, looked down. "Then stop hiding." She looked at him. His eyes were different now, no sarcasm, no masks. "I'm serious," he said. "Write something again. Post it, this time with your name. Show them you're not ashamed." She laughed bitterly. "Easy for you to say, you don't have anything to lose." He reached for her hand. "I do now." The words haunted her all night. "I do now." She couldn't stop replaying them. She sat at her desk until dawn, staring at the empty page. Then she picked up her pen and wrote, not about Joon-ho, not about love, about herself, about silence, about fear, about being laughed at and still standing up, about taking the pain and turning it into art. And when the sun rose, she opened the anonymous school account and sent the poem to the page. But this time she added one final line. "Han Bora the Post." Went live during third period. No one expected it, and that was the point. A full poem, raw, honest, fierce. It didn't defend her. It didn't attack anyone. It just told the truth. By lunch, the comments had shifted. "This one hits different. She's braver than half this school. I feel this in my chest." Even people who had mocked her before started sharing. Bora sat quietly under the trees near the back of the field, watching from a distance, still unsure what to feel, until a shadow fell over her. She looked up. Nara. She stood with arms crossed, lips tight, voice low. "Did you really have to?" "Sign your name." Bora stood up slowly. "I did," Nara scoffed. "You're not special, you know." Bora nodded. "I know," then looked her straight in the eye. "But I'm not invisible anymore either." For the first time, Nara had no comeback. She turned and walked away, and Bora felt something she hadn't in weeks, power. But that didn't mean things were perfect. Joon-ho hadn't texted her all day, and when she looked for him after school, he was gone. Not at the art room. Not at his usual spot on the rooftop. Not even in detention. She went home with a strange ache in her chest. What if he had changed his mind? What if seeing her exposed, her words out there for real, made her less mysterious, less interesting? Truth was, Joon-ho had seen the post the second it went live. He had read it twice, then 3 more times. And for the first time in his life, he had cried, not loud, not messy, just quietly, alone in the hallway near the vending machines, because the girl he used to tease, the girl who used to blush when he said her name, had become the bravest person he knew, and he didn't know how to deserve her. He disappeared for 3 days. Not because he was angry, because he was scared. Scared of how much she mattered now. Scared of ruining something real. But on the 4th day he came back, with her poem in his hands and a plan. The classroom was buzzing with noise. Desks shifted, papers fluttered. Someone was playing music low on their phone. No one noticed when Lee Joon-ho walked in. Not at first. But then he headed straight to the front of the room and placed something gently on the teacher's desk, a single folded sheet of pink paper, the color Bora always used. Then he turned around and spoke. "I need 5 minutes." The teacher hesitated, clearly unsure what was happening. But before she could respond, the room fell quiet, because everyone saw what was in his hand. A poem. Bo-ra's handwriting. Joon-ho took a deep breath and read, "He doesn't know that I write him into places he's never been. That I give his silence a voice, that I make him softer in my words than he knows how to be in real life. He scares me, not because he's loud, but because he makes me want to speak." He paused, looked up, straight into Bo-ra's eyes. She was sitting near the back, frozen, pale, her heart pounding so hard she felt it in her ears. He walked toward her, each step slow, certain. When he reached her desk, he knelt, actually knelt, right there in the middle of class, and held the poem out to her like it was a promise. "I should have protected you from the beginning," he said. "I didn't. And I'm sorry." Bo-ra blinked, eyes wide, stunned into silence. Joon-ho looked up at her. No grin, no games. "I don't care if people laugh. Shall I post or talk? I care about you, and if I have to read every single poem out loud until this whole school gets it, I will." She let out a shaky breath. Everyone was watching, but she didn't care anymore. She reached down, took the paper from his hand and whispered, "You're lucky I like dramatic gestures." A pause. Then she smiled and he smiled back. And then he stood and pulled her into a hug so tight it felt like safety. That afternoon they sat together under the cherry tree behind the school, just the two of them. No poems, no sketches, just quiet. "Why? Did you disappear?" she asked softly. He looked at her hands, held them. "Because I wasn't sure I could be the guy you saw in your poems." "You don't have to be," she whispered. "You already are." His eyes met hers. This time there were no interruptions, no teasing, no fear, just truth. He leaned in slowly. She didn't look away, and when he kissed her, it wasn't a surprise. It was the answer to every question her poems had ever asked. Later that night, Bo-ra wrote one last poem. It was short. He never asked to be saved, but he made me brave enough to stop hiding. And maybe that's the real kind of love. She didn't keep it in her notebook. She gave it to him and he kept it in his sketchbook. Taped to the last page, the school moved on like schools always do, but the rumors stopped, because no one dared joke about Bo-ra anymore. Not after the way she stood up, not after the way Joon-ho knelt down. They weren't enemies anymore. They weren't strangers. They were a story, a real one, and this time she didn't have to write it in secret.